So this is a graded warm-up. You will not have the scores back immediately because I will be pretty much teaching the entire time. Just throwing that out there for you. One, two, three, four. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Is there anybody who is confused at where those 2 points are? Can everybody see that? I've tried to make them nice and big. Yes? So if I asked you what those points are, you would be able to tell me? Yes? Good. Right. The equation of the line in slope intercept form. So you're writing the equation of the line in y equals mx plus b form. You are writing the equation of the line in y equals mx plus b form. So y equals mx plus b. You need to have it in y equals mx plus b form. Make sure your name is on it. Once you are done, raise your hand. I will come around and collect. We have 1 more minute. There are 2 things you need for an equation. Instead of graphing it, you're working backwards. You will see math questions like this. Once you're done, go ahead and get out your packet, please. Jason, I need you to get your calculator in the packet. You have a phone?
Not on me.
Go to the library. Come on. Okay, you two, pick them up. Okay. Thank you. first and foremost, I'm going to pretend like I have lots of energy. But who's heard of a man cold? Like, I really just want to pretend like I'm like, oh my God, I'm dying, because I don't feel good. And I just want to lay on the couch and just scream for my wife and be like, Ashley, give me a drink, because that's how I feel. But instead, I'm going to pretend like everything's great and I feel wonderful and that I didn't almost vomit up my green tea that I had earlier, because that certainly didn't happen. What?
I don't know.
Me either, man. I barely ever know anything.
Everyone's just giggling. So
Did you giggle?
kind of, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. A more important question. For 1 billion bonus points that don't actually matter. They don't matter because they're not really bonus points. It's pretend billion bonus points. And Sydney's like, I've already got it. Just throw it at me. Do you have it?
Yeah.
Sydney's like, yeah, I do. Sydney started like reacting. She's like, cool. I don't know why you were so excited for that though. You're like, I'm gonna do it.
I want extra credit, Mr. Eddie.
1 billion fake bonus points for this blue piece of gum. Imagine if it was like turquoise or purple, or if it was a rainbow piece of gum, it'd have been 1 billion bazillion bonus points. Quiz grades. Relatively proud of you. For the most part, we did well. For the most part. This was the first time that first hour kicked your guys' rear ends. Usually you crush first hour. You didn't. First hour crushed you guys. That's disappointing. But not a bad thing, because it wasn't really like a crushing, it was like half a point. You should be proud of your grades. We're going to go over them. I'll hand those back. This warm-up, you will see on the map test. If we have a map test, if we make it to the end of the year, if we have school, you know what I mean. Okay. So, don't give me that look. So, can I tell you about the biggest problem with my maths right now? I know that I joke a lot, and I have no idea who's giving me completely dirty looks, or who's like, oh, I'm going to chuckle at Mr. H, because she sits right here, and I can never tell, because I can see a smile, but I can't see. Because I just said all kinds of stuff behind my mask. You can't see that, and that bothers me. I just also just spit a little bit.
Yeah.
No.
I heard the pop.
You what?
Like your mouth popping.
Her mouth popping.
Yeah.
How about now?
No.
Ah, okay, good. Then you'll never know what I said. Yeah. I did. I accidentally spit into my mask. Let me get a different mask.
Just extra flavor.
Extra flavor.
Yeah.
Wow.
Ew.
That's something.
You're welcome.
What? First off, what is slope-intercept form? Let's go there. What's slope-intercept form? Sid. Y equals mx plus b. What two things do we need in order to graph? If I have y equals mx plus b, what two variables would I have to have in order to actually make the graph? Izzy?
M and B.
M and b. So if I'm going to make an equation, we still need m and b. We know that m, or we should know that m is slope, b is my y-intercept. My y-intercept is my first place that we want to start. That's the easiest thing to do. My y-intercept is along the y-axis. We start at the origin, which is 0. 1, 2, 3. My y-intercept is now positive 3. Questions on how easy that was? Okay, slope immediately just by looking at this line, Tippy. What do we know about the slope? It's negative. Why? It's going downhill from left to right. So my slope is some negative fraction. Once I know it's negative, I'm counting my rise, I'm counting my run. So rise is going down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now it's negative 6, 1, 2. So my slope is negative 6 divided by 2. If you gave me negative 6 divided by 2, I'm not going to mark it wrong this time, but that's not simplified. I would take negative 3 divided by 1. Whoa. But more than likely, on a test, it's going to be negative 3. Okay? So my equation, now I substitute back in y equals mx positive b. And there's my equation. Questions, concerns, problems on this? Anybody's? You will have questions like this on your map test. You will continue to have questions like this in my class. Let's do this now. Let's get some tests back. Not tests, quizzes. Again, for the most part, I am very pleased. Some of you scored higher than you normally do. Some of you scored lower than you normally do. Some of you should come in and ask for help. Some of you should think about sending me an email and dropping the quiz. Remember, you have 5 days. You have until Thanksgiving. So before you leave for Thanksgiving, you can send me an email and say, Mr. H, I'd like to drop this quiz. If you'd like to make that decision after coming up to me during Rise or Shine or after school and say, hey, Mr. H, can I see what my overall grade is if you take that grade out? I'd be glad to. But you have until Thanksgiving. That's for both A and B days. B days, you have a little less time to choose. Questions? Okay, are there any immediate questions that you're looking at and you're like, Mr. H, I think you marked something wrong? No, I don't think so either, but the biggest problems that I saw on your quiz were us not going back over lesson 2 summary and knowing that if the mean and the median were very similar, they're symmetrical. That was the key to lesson 2. That was the only key to lesson 2. If the mean and median were similar, then the graph is symmetrical. Plain and simple. Both the mean and the median for both of these were very close. 77 and 80 and 59 and 75 hundredths and 60. They were close. This data set was symmetrical. Questions, concerns, problems. Okay, so have your problem set out, or not your problem set. Have S31, I believe, open. That was lesson 5. So have S31. That was lesson 5. It was talking about standard deviation. Listen to me carefully here, because I want you to understand the seriousness of this. You will have a question on your test where you have to do standard deviation by hand. You should have watched the videos and have notes on it. Show of hands, how many of you watched the video and have good notes? Okay, then you should do great on this. I'm not going over it. If you have questions, I will gladly help you during Rise or Shine. Questions? Great, because now we all need to make sure that we have calculators. Is there anybody who's using a calculator that is not one of my yellow ones? Okay, you have to use the yellow one today. Your calculator will not do what we need it to do if you do not use the yellow one. And that does not mean if you have a TI-83 or a TI-84, it will still work. But you need to have the yellow calculator. Okay. One minute. I need a scribe. That means I'm going to be saying something. I'm going to need somebody to come up and write on the board. Who would like to write on the board for me that has nice handwriting? Come on up, Sid. Hold on. You're going to be dealing with a wet marker, but because my nose is running, I'd rather you not have a marker that's going to be disgusting. Okay. So, you are going to write up the test scores from this class. These are your test scores from the last test. You're going to want a separate piece of paper, and you're going to want to write these down. Let me make sure they're out of order. Perfect. Love it. Here we go. Can you put it nice and high at the very top? Try to put them all in one line. Yep, just in one line. So if you have to make them smaller, that's fine. 70, 72, 88, 54, 56, 56, 86, 86, 72, 86, 82, 86, 92, 92, 88. Okay, have a seat. Thank you. You guys just got to stare at my face for a while. Lucky you guys. Okay, so we have these scores right here. They're a little small. I'm going to make them bigger. Here's what I want you to do now. I would like you, so may I steal your paper real quick, Wrigley? So Wrigley's got her numbers on two different lines. We don't want that. Okay, so when I ask you to do this next thing, see if you can fit them all on one line. Everybody with me? I would like you to put these in numerical order. In ascending numerical order. Who can tell me what ascending numerical order means?
Going up.
Yeah, going up. Starting with the lowest score, going up. Thank you, Brooks. Go ahead. So put these in ascending numerical order. So check your numerical order versus mine. Make sure that you have it. There should be 15 numbers up there, I believe. Double check. That's how many people we have in class. Everybody with me so far? Okay. First and foremost, let's talk about test scores in general. I had somebody in my my RISE class because I say, okay, hey, give me something good. I like to hear good things. Give me something good. It was on Monday or on Tuesday. And he said, what was good for me is you gave me a good quiz score. Here's what you have to understand. You earned whatever the score is. You earned a great score, or you could have earned a bad score. I don't give you the score. I don't grade it differently for my favorite students versus my students who might not be my favorites, because we don't have favorites, right? Ever. I don't grade it differently. If you matched your quiz up with somebody else's, you'd be able to say, oh man, I missed the same amount of points they did. Okay? So I don't grade any differently based off of who the child is. I usually don't even look at the name. You earn these scores. So be proud of what you've earned, or realize that you need to step up and earn something a little bit higher. Right? Okay. When I look at test scores, I start off very basic to see if I've done my job correctly. I immediately go, man, I've got some Fs. That stinks. I've got 1, 2, 3 Fs. Okay? Can I balance those out by having the same number of A's? And in this case, 1, 2, I can't. I've got one more F than A. I'm already upset. So now I look at my B's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've got 7 B's. Let's look at my D's. Oh, I don't have any. Ooh, so which way has my graph shifted? To the higher or to the lower? Oh, to the higher end. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in the top 2 grades versus 3 in the bottom 2. Everybody with me still? That's how I look at it and say, did I do a decent job? Not a good job, not a great job. Did I do a decent job? Are my kids at least balanced out enough that I've got some high scores versus the low scores? Absolutely. Ugh. Right now, our graph is definitely skewed towards the higher end. And then I've got 1, 2, 3 C's. So we definitely have higher scores. So where would you expect your mean to be? In the 70s? In the 50s? In the 80s? In the 90s? Where would you expect this to be closer to? Peyton, what do you think?
The 80s.
Yeah, I'd expect it to be a lot closer to the 80s than I would to like the 60s, just based off of those scores. Everybody still with me? So that's how I roughly look at it to say, okay, great. Lesson 5 and lesson 6, are about standard deviation. When I was teaching gifted and honors and talented in Virginia, I taught the algebra students in 7th grade, I taught the geometry students in 8th grade, and then I recommended them to advanced algebra 2, honors algebra 2, regular algebra 2, or to repeat geometry. I had four options. Nobody ever had to repeat geometry. Very few had to take basic algebra 2. But then I had advanced and I had honors. So what I looked at was what was called standard deviation. Standard deviation is a range of what's considered average. Okay, so if you think of an IQ test, and I'm making this up, the average IQ of the US is 100. Okay, that's the average IQ of the US. But what's considered average goes down to 90, goes up to 110. So that person that's 110 is still considered average, but they're on the high end of average. As soon as you hit 111, they're no longer considered average. They're considered above average. And that next range goes from like 111 to 130. And I know my wife and I, because we've done this, she's at like a 127 or a 126. We are on the very upper end of above average. We're not quite genius, but we know that when we have in-depth conversations, it's much easier to have in-depth conversations with those people who are in those 120s than those people who are in the 90s. Just because that's a big difference, right? It's hard for us to have conversations with the people who are at 140 because they are that much brighter than us. And we have a guy who we walk around the neighborhood with, and he is a doctor of physics, and he's like, oh, you're a mathematician. Let me tell you about this. I was like, uh-huh. He's like, oh, you didn't understand that? I was like, no. Try again. I was like, when did you get your doctorate there, Brian? Oh, I got my doctorate at 21. I was like, when did you go to college? He's like, 15. Uh-huh. You know what I was doing at 15, Brian? Playing a lot of sports. Like, I wasn't in college, man. He's like, no, yeah, I was just done with high school. Cool. Standard deviation is a range of normalcy. What is average? Okay, so now I want to figure out what's average. Who is in that standard deviation? So now we're going to get our calculators. And this is where we're going to do this several times. You're going to be upset with me because I'm going to ask you to do some things. I don't care. We need to practice. So the first thing that we're going to do is press the stat button. The stat button, if you go to your arrows, is to the left of it. So everybody see stat? Press stat. It gives you a screen that has edit, calculate, and tests. Right now, edit is highlighted with the edit also highlighted. Everybody see that? Press enter. You now come to a screen that has a bunch of lists. L1, L2, L3, L4, L5. Everybody see that? Is there anybody who's not there? Okay. Who has numbers in L1? We don't want numbers in L1. So use your arrows to highlight the actual thing that says L1. And then press clear. Oh man, nothing happened, right? Pressure down arrow. Oh, look what happened. It all cleared out. Is there anybody who was not able to clear out their numbers?
I don't have an L1. I just have an L2.
Well, that's silly. Load. Second memory. Reset. False. Reset. You don't. Okay, go get a different calculator. I don't want it. Put that back. Okay, is everybody good? So now we are still highlighting underneath L1 on those dashes. Yes? No? Maybe so? So we should be highlighted underneath the L1 on the dashes. Let's enter in these scores. So I press 54 and then I press enter and it moves down. Put it on my desk, please. Oh, that's on video too. You're welcome. I'm not saying your name on video for having your phone out. Oh, man. You're not even over this. So you highlight L1, you press clear, you come down. Okay, so we're entering in these scores. You have to press the number, you press enter. Let me know once you've had it. How many numbers do we have? So that next number will be the 16th, so you have the correct number of numbers. That makes sense? Okay, so right now, if you've pressed enter after the last number, you should have something that says L1 and in parentheses it says 16 equals. That means in parentheses, that's going to be the 16th number that you would be entering. So if you're able to count, or if a test says, oh, like what we just did, there's 30 female scores, and your number says L129. Did you enter in all of your numbers? No. We know there's 15 scores, so do we have 15 scores in there? Absolutely. So we've now entered in our data. Because have I lost anybody yet? So we've entered in the data. We're now going to press Stat again. We come back up to Edit, Calcs, and Tests. Move over to the right to highlight Calc. That means we're going to calculate something. The first thing that is highlighted is 1 var stats. Then it talks about 2 var stats, med, lin reg, quad reg, cube reg, quart reg, lin reg, lun reg. Everybody see that? You have 2 options. You can highlight the number 1, which it already is, or you can just press number 1. I prefer to just press number 1. And now I have something that says 1 var stats. It says list L1. If your list is not L1, raise your hands. Okay. Keep pressing enter until you get down to calculate. Because we want to calculate something. Boop. You should now have a huge list of things. It should have x hat, which is our mean. It should have a sigma x squared, an s of x, what is that? A sigma x, an n of a min x, a q1, and you can move down and you can see all kinds of things. Everybody with me? Is anybody not at that place? Stat. Calculate. Press enter. Keep pressing enter. Okay, so based off of just this, we are able to find 3 important things. The first important thing that we're finding is my mean. It's x hat. X hat is approximately 77 and 73/100ths. Does everybody have 77.73333333333 in their calculator? If not, you did something wrong in your enter. Well, what else do we think we can find? Well, how about the median? So use your down arrow until you find something that says med. And it tells me 86. So just like your quiz, looking at these scores, are they close? Not really. So this graph is definitely skewed, right? Skewed which way? Definitely skewed towards my higher numbers. Everybody still with me? Okay. Then the other thing that we want to find is this sigma with an x, because this is standard deviation. That thing right there is standard deviation. So let's round to the nearest hundredth. What is my standard deviation for this set of data? Peyton.
13 and 200.
Very good. 13 and 200ths. Man, Mr. H, this would have been really easy to have on my last test, wouldn't it? To find the mean and the median. Yeah, I know. Good talk. Now you'll be able to do it. Question so far. So here's what I want you to do. Press stat. So do that now. Press stat. Press enter on edit. Highlight L1. Press clear. Move your cursor down. So your list is clear, yes? Press second, which is the blue button. Press mode, which is right next to it. That's second quit. That takes me back to my main screen, yes? So here's what I want you to do. Do it again. Get these answers again. Why am I making you do this? Because I walked you through it. Now let's see if you can follow the steps, okay? So go ahead, enter your scores in, go back to stat. Let's see if you can get back to the same spot. Go ahead. I will help you if you need it. I also need to blow my nose. That's my last one. It's awesome. All right, Jason, put it on my desk, please. Back to me 1 second. Man. Sorry, I'm right in front of the camera, but I'm entering in quiz scores. Okay. So, to do this, we press stat, we highlight edit, we press enter. We enter in all of our numerical values, which should be 15 of them. We press stat again. We move our right arrow over to calculate. We press 1 for one of our stats. We press enter, enter, enter. And we've now got our mean, our median, and our standard deviation. Is there anybody who is lost on how we do that besides Jason, who just came in, who will have to catch up as we go along, which is also why I have a live video and you'll watch that. Questions? Okay. So what does standard deviation actually mean? It means how far away are we from average that's still considered within the range of average. So my average is 77 and 7300ths. So my mean is 77 and 7300ths. Everybody with me there? We consider everything that if I take away 13 and 200ths, if I add 13 and 200ths, to be within one standard deviation. So if I take my calculator, I do 77 and 73/100 minus 13 and 2/100. That gives me 64 and 71/100. And then I go the opposite way. I add 13 and 2/100. And that gives me 90 and 75/100. This is another way to show that our data is skewed. We have a lot more in our standard deviation in the higher end. We have more people that are above average than below average. So here's my question. Which numbers are within one standard deviation? Which test scores are within the range of average? Raise your hands, come on. Leanne, sorry.
Anything from 70 to 88?
Yes, 70, 72, 72, 82, 86, 86, 86, 86, 88, 88. These are all which are considered in the range of average. Do we have some that are on the upper end? Sure. Do we have some that are towards the lower end? Yes. Those are within one standard deviation. Everything else is either above that one standard deviation, which means it's above the average, or it's below the average. I use standard deviation to see how I recommended students to the next classes. I wanted them to be at least one full standard deviation above average to recommend them for honors. I wanted them to be 1.5 times above standard deviation to recommend them to advanced. Because the closer the standard deviation is to the mean, the tighter those scores are. Right now, do we have a very wide spread of scores? We would say that these test scores have a high variability. Variability meaning they're very far away. Everybody with me? So standard deviation gives me the range of average. This is a range that we would consider an average. Everything on either side then becomes above or below average. We still with me? Okay. Can I get one more person to be a scribe? So those were our tests. Let's do our quizzes. I need a scribe. I don't care who it is. I just need somebody to come up and be a scribe. Sid, if you can come on, Sid, that's fine. Okay, here we go. Let me get these out of order. Perfect. Okay, you ready? 29, 28, 32, 31, 32, 31, 33, 33, 28, 20. 21, 33, 35, 35. You made those very small.
Sorry.
That's all right. Go ahead. Get out here. Put them in numerical order and then enter them in and find the mean, median, and standard deviation. I think we're only going to have we're only going to have 14 this time, because I think somebody already dropped the quiz. Perfect. All with me. stats are our go-to. So we press stat. We have all these things. We want to edit first. Okay, so you have numbers in there. Highlight L1, so press your arrow to go up to L1. Press clear. Nothing happens, right? Press down. Now they're out. So now we're going to enter in these scores. So to do that, we press 20, enter, and it goes down. Okay, so you did something wrong. 14 scores. See how mine says L1 15? What does yours say?
6.
Let's make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Oh, you have to keep it down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So you just did the wrong. Well, no, you have 15 numbers, but you only have 14 that are given to you.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, so let's forget that for now. Okay. So now I'm going to press stat again. So you don't do yours, I'm going to do mine. I'm going to let you fix it. That takes me back to this. I go to calculate. We want one variable statistics. It says L1. That's important because your data is in L1. We go to calculate. It gives me my mean. It gives me my median. And it gives me my standard deviation. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more. Okay. So you need to go figure out in your edit which numbers you have to move. Okay, so I still want you to have your mean, your median, and your sigma x. For rounding to the nearest thousandth, you need to look at the 10,000 spot to tell me whether to round it up or down. So double check your work once you have it. You will see this kind of stuff on a test. Okay, questions on how I found my mean to be 30 and 700ths. Questions on how I found the median to be 31 and a half. Questions on my standard deviation being 4 and 4500ths. If you were not able to find those, please raise your hand. Let me help you with the calculator. Stat. Gotta go to calculate. Then you just press enter. Okay. So, what does this mean? This means my average, my mean, was at 30 and 700ths. Everybody with me still? The scores that are within one standard deviation, I'm adding 4 and 4500ths, and I'm subtracting 4 and 4500ths. So I take my mean, I take 30 and 700ths plus 4 and 4500ths, and that gives me 34 and 5200ths. When I subtract, that gives me 25 and 6200ths. So if I said what scores from the quiz were considered in the average range, you would tell me, and when I say average, here's my average. These are absolutely above average. These are below average. We know that, but you have a range of what's considered normal. 28, 29, 31, 32, 33 are within that normal range. That's one standard deviation. Anything outside of that range is low. Anything above that range is high. And there is something called a z-score where we can figure out exactly what standard deviation away it is, whether it's 0.75 deviations, 1.2, 1.5. It's called a z-score. Engage New York doesn't talk about it yet, but that's what I use when I start to recommend you. This is what I used last year when I recommended students for algebra. I use z-scores. So standard deviation. You might have a question that says, what's the highest score within one standard deviation? And you'd have to look and you'd have to say, oh, 33 is the highest quiz score that we have within one standard deviation. I might say, what's the lowest? And you'd say 28. Questions on this? Okay. Now, I hate to do this because I don't like to be wrong. Please go to page S45. And this is on video, and you can say, Mr. H, you're a joke of a teacher, you're a bad teacher, you don't know what you're talking about, and all of those would be fair right now. I told you that I have taught box and whisker plots for all 14 years that I've taught. Yet for some reason, when I made lessons 7 and 8, I said, inside that box on that line is the mean. And it's not. It's the median. So right now, where it says something about the box plot of ages for Kenya, that line in the middle of the box, draw a line there. Say that's the median. I know it's the median. You should now know it's the median, but unfortunately this jerk who made a video and who's on this video is up here going, oh, it's the mean. That jerk's me. It's not the mean. It's the median. Why did I say that? I don't know, but in lesson 8, I'm talking about it's the last 30 seconds of the video. I'm like, what? It's not the mean, it's the median. Like, I don't know why. It's the median. It's the median. It is the median. Questions? Did I remake the videos? No. Will I for next year? Absolutely. But I don't know why I did that. The line in the middle of the box is the median. Questions? You have 2 videos to watch, lessons 7 and 8. These are the last 2 videos before we take our mid-module test. You, being A day, will take that mid-module test the very first day you come back from Thanksgiving. Plain and simple. Because you will have a review day 11/24, which is the last day, and then you'll have the test when you come back, which is 2 days actually, because you have B day first, then A day. B day, kids, when you come back from Thanksgiving, you'll have a review, and then you'll have a test. You guys have a lot of review time. You got a lot of review time. Use it wisely and ask me questions. Questions? Standard deviation. The distance away from the mean that's still considered within a normal range. Okay.